manuscript or one edition. Suppose we have one book or we have a manuscript. Do you know what I mean by a manuscript? Means a palm leaf text. Yeah, we are reading and we are just reading one. And we see a sentence that grammatically is problematic. It seems that it doesn't, some things are not completely according to the rule. And we don't know what happened, if that should be correct. Or maybe the reading is actually, the reading is doubtful. Maybe there was a mistake in the copy. There was a mistake in the transmission of the text. This is more conspicuous, and it's easier to see when instead of reading one edition or one manuscript, we compare different editions and different manuscripts. There are places that are not clear, and in one manuscript you will see it written in one way, in another manuscript you will see it written in a different way, and then you check one printed edition and it will be written yet in a different way. And these are what are called the doubtful readings. There's one very nice example of doubtful reading that extends to the commentaries also, because sometimes you say, well, let's check the commentary and see what was the reading that Buddhaghosa was reading at that time. But it's not so easy, and I'm going to give you an example, because since this is the philological pathway, there are more, but this one is one that I think it's in a very famous passage. And I remember seeing that when I was working at the Dhammachai Tipitaka project. We were doing the Digha Nikaya. And it's a very famous passage, but there is a very interesting textual problem. I think even in the, yeah. 1 second, I'm going to share the screen. It's just to clarify what do we mean by doubtful reading. Sometimes the doubtful reading is in the verb, sometimes in the... So here I hope you can read the text. It is a very famous beginning of the Mahanidana Sutta. And you remember that sentence here. Etassa ananda dhammassa ananuboda appativeda evam ayam paja tanta kulaka jata kulagantika jata. But you have a variant reading, gulaguntika jata, and you have another variant reading, gunagantika jata, and then munja pabbaja bhuta apayam duggatim binipatam sansaram nati vattati. So the sentence is very famous, but there is this word here that is problematic. And then you will say, well, actually there are more readings. Here in the Burmese edition, there are only 2. It says that the Sihanlese and PTS, they read gula instead of kula. And they don't read gantika, they read guntika. And jata is okay, jata is consistent. And then there is, in the Siam version, we have guna, not gula or kula, we have guna, gantika, not guntika, but gantika, like in the Burmese, jata. Now some philologists or some scholars can say, well, let's check what Buddhaghosa says here and problem solved, right? So let's see what was the reading that Buddhaghosa was saying. But that's also an interesting, let's see if we find it. Yeah. Here there are no variant readings. But see, this is the commentary. Of course, the Burmese edition takes this one. Kula Gantika. See that, remember that in the previous reading, in the Mula, we had only Kula, not Kula. Now we have Kula, yeah? So already there is a variant between the Mula of the Burmese edition and at least in the online edition. And it says, Kula Gantikam Vuchati Pesakarakan Jia Suttam. Kula Nama Sakunika. So that's a kind of verb. Tassa Kulava Koti Piyeke. So some, you see, Tassa. So some say that it's not the verb, but this kind And then yatahi tadvayampi akulam agyenava aggammulenava mulam samanetum dukkaram iti purimanayena eva yojatamam. Okay. But here, if you check, for instance, the PTS, or if you compare different manuscripts and different editions of the Atakata, of the commentary, you will also see that there is no consistency with the reading of this word. And of course, then the translators, they have to translate. But depending on one thing, it's like, it's confused like a ball, like a gula, or it's confused like this kind of ulagantita, whatever that is. Ula means family, but ula is a kind of, it seems to be a kind of bird, but no one knows exactly. It's a difficult word. So in such cases, there are doubtful readings. We are not completely sure what is the best reading, and everyone will choose one. So you have to decide which one you prefer, which one makes more sense. Maybe sometimes you can see another passage somewhere else. But as I said, there's a problem that sometimes if we compare with another passage, that other passage will also have variant reading, the same variant reading and the same textual problem. So this is all the basic function of the nominative as the subject, as the subject agent. So subject means it's the grammatical subject. It's also the logical subject of the sentence. Yeah, is it clear so far? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Now we move to what about when the sentence is a passive sentence? That means the verb is passive. So what is the difference between an active verb and a passive verb? How would you define, without looking at any book, if you try to think, suppose we have to explain to someone what is the difference between a verb that is a passive or active. And by active, we say, I think your terminology is kattukaraka and passive is kammakaraka. Or you can also say kattari or kammani in the active or in the passive. Kattari is in the active voice, kammani is in the passive voice. So how do you explain in a simple way what is the difference between an active verb or a passive verb? This is a real problem because I'm having this problem right now. As you know, I sometimes I teach courses to Westerners, and you are probably teaching to Westerners, or you will teach eventually to Westerners. So when we move and we try to explain these things, they are very easy for us. We know that the deity, that's a passive. We call it passive, that's kammani. But how do you explain what does passive mean? What is the meaning of passive? What is the difference between active and passive? You can use English examples. Like I'm writing a book, that is active. The book is written by me, that is passive. The book is being written by me, that is a passive sentence. And I'm writing a book, that is the active sentence. But conceptually, what is the difference?
In active voice, the action is done by the agent and subject.
Okay.
In the passive voice, action is done by the object.
Very good. So very good. Yeah. So another way that you will find it expressed that in the active, the action is done by the subject, and in the passive, the action is suffered by the subject.
Okay.
For instance, if I say that I destroy, sorry about the example, but I destroy the book, that's active. And I is the subject of the sentence, and the book is the object, so I destroy the book. I'm doing the action. The action is done by the subject. But if I say the book is destroyed by me, so being destroyed is not an action that is done, is a kind of action that is suffered. So the consequences of that action are suffered by the subject of the sentence. And actually that's the meaning of passive. Passive, the meaning of why we use the term passive in English, that comes from Latin, and originally it comes from the Greek concept, but that was translated into Latin and then into French and then into English. So you know that English words are not original. They usually come from French, and French words are not originally. They usually come from Latin, and Latin words are not original. They usually are translations from the Greek, and some Greek words are not originally. Sometimes are translations from some other. But this is the story of words, and that's why sometimes they don't make much sense. So why passive means is something that happens to them. In the passive sentence, there's something that happens to the subject. For instance, the book is destroyed by me. The book is there, just there. The book is doing nothing, but there's someone else that, boom, smashes the book. So the book is just there suffering this action. Yeah, it's passive. It's not It's not doing anything. It's just suffering the action. And who is doing something in the passive sentence is an agent. There's also an agent, but that agent is not the grammatical subject. It's not the grammatical subject of the sentence. In Pali, we express that agent with the instrumental case or the tatiya vibhatti. And in that case, we say that this is tatiya vibhatti in the sense of katta. The function, the karaka is katta. But the subject, the grammatical subject, like dhammo cha desiyati, the doctrine too is preached. So dhammo desiyati, the doctrine is taught or is preached. Here dhammo is the subject, is the passive subject. The patient subject is patient. Sometimes you will see that concept, the patient subject. But it's still the logical object. That is what is being taught. Yeah. But in general, I think the Bhikkhu Siddhartha's definition is I think it's quite clear. Like in the active, the subject represents the agent. In the passive, the subject represents the object. That's basically what you meant, right? Venerable Siddhartha? That was basically the point, I think. And I think that's correct, and that's a good understanding. So the nominative, if the sentence is active, the nominative will express the katta. If the sentence is a passive, the nominative will express kamma. Yeah? The logical object, that is kamma. It's the grammatical subject, but it's the logical object. That is the difference between what is grammatical and what is logical. Logical means in reality. In reality, the book is destroyed by me. The book is the object of the action of destroying. Dhammo desiyati, the Dhamma is the object of the action of teaching. Evarupam bhojanam diyati, such food is given. Food such as this is given. Sorry about the typo. Given. Or another one, asutava putujjano na parimucchati. The unlearned worldling is not released. Is not released. So the asutava putujjano here is the subject of the sentence, but it's the logical object. So no one is releasing him, or the mind is not releasing him, or the suffering is not releasing him, something like this. Yeah. So this is with passive verbs. Now, the nominative in passive sentence, because it expresses the kamma, then it can also express the goal or the way when the verbs are verbs of motion. And verbs of motion means verbs that mean to go, to enter, to move, to approach. I don't know, you name it. Any verb that means moving somewhere, that is a verb of motion. Verb of motion. So you know that in the active voice, verbs of motion, they can take an accusative of goal or way. Like if I say, aham gamam gacchami. Yeah, aham gamam gacchami. Then you can say, okay, how can you say gamam in the accusative, the dutiya vibhatti? Gamam, is that the object? Is that the kamma of gacchami? In a way, yeah. In a way, it's the kamma, because it's the goal in this case. It's the object of my movement. Yeah. So it's the kind of object or objective or the destination, the final point of my movement. Something like this. One example. Aranyakena uso bhikkhuna natikalena gamo pavisitabbo. And here the example is gamo pavisitabbo. Very good example. Gamo, nominative. Pavisitabbo is a future passive participle. Pavisitabbo should be entered. So the village should be entered. So if we would move that into the active, we would say that bhikkhu gamam pavisati or pavisissati. But if we if we use it in the passive, is bhikkhuna gamo pavisitabo. By the bhikkhu, the village should be entered or will be entered. Yeah. So this is again a transposition of what in the active sentence is an accusative, in the passive sentence is a nominative. What in the active sentence is a nominative, in the passive sentence is, if the active is transitive, then in the passive sentence it will be instrumental. So here we have bhikkhuna in the instrumental, that is tatiya vibhatti, expressing the katta. Mango kome gantapo. The path should be gone, literally, by me. This is something that in English we cannot translate. See that here this translation is quite literal. The road should be walked by me. Maybe in English it sounds a little bit better than in other European languages. I'm not so sure. But my point is, I don't know if when in Pali we say maggo me gantabo, does it sound as strange as in English, the road should be walked by me? I think in Pali, maggo me gantabo sounds relatively natural, but in English, the road should be walked by me. It doesn't sound very natural. What sounds natural in English is to use the active voice, something like I should walk the path, something like this. I should walk the path. Instead, the path should be walked by me.
I have an idea for this translation.
Sure. Yeah.
Shall we give path should be practiced by me?
Exactly. That is also a perfect translation, because to go means to follow. It should be followed by me, or it should be practiced. My question here, and this is a question that, for instance, in Spanish translations we have all the time, and there is a division of opinions. Sorry, I'm drinking a lot of water because it's just very hot. This summer here is very hot, so I'm talking all the time. So there, in Pali or in Indian languages, and I'm not so sure, maybe also in Sihanlese, the passive construction is common. It's not so uncommon. There are many sentences that are expressed in the passive, and it's perfectly normal, and it sounds very natural in the language. In English, it depends on what type of English. In academic English, yeah, there is a lot of passive sentences. But in normal day-to-day English, the passive is not as common as the active. The natural way of expressing something is in the active. And in other European languages, like for instance, in my case, in Spanish, we also express things in the active, preferably not in the passive voice. Although we can also say the same thing in the passive voice. There is an option. We can also say the path should be gone by me, or should be practiced by me, or I should practice the path, or I should walk the path. Both are possible. So some translators, they say that even if it doesn't sound totally natural in Spanish, for instance, or in English, we have to preserve the passive of the original, because the passive is usually a way of speaking that is more impersonal. It's more impersonal. Things happen. It's not that someone is doing something. So in this way, the idea of anatta is more visible. Yeah, it's something happens instead of I'm doing something, because the idea of the I or the agent, who is the atta, who is someone, some puggala, it kind of dissolves into the action taking place. As Buddhaghosa says, there is no agent doing something, there is just an action taking place. So the passive voice would represent this concept in a better way. But that is a matter of taste. And in any case, what is important here, that sometimes you will see a nominative in the passive sentence, and that stands for an object that we will call the kamma. But in this case, it's this kamma that represents the goal all the way. In the same way that in the active we can say gamam gacchami, in the passive we can say gamo gantabo, something like this. Yeah, or gamo gato. Gamo gato is, some constructions are more frequent than the other. See that these two examples are done with the future passive participle. But yeah, gamo gato in principle should also be accepted. The village is gone to. The village is gone to. Yeah, he translates should be entered. So pavisitable. Anyway, now we have another example of the nominative, that is the infinitive, tumanta plus arhati, deserves, sukara, easy, sakka, sposa. With these expressions, so see the example, na arahati ayasma ambatto avisajjitum. The venerable Ambatta does not deserve to be accused. So here Ambatta is actually the subject of arahati. No, sorry, arahati, it's not. Yeah, so how do you analyze this? So narahati ayasma ambatto avisajjitum. He doesn't deserve to be accused, avisajjitum. How do you take this nominative here? To me, it's a little bit, it's another example of the same. It's a nominative of the subject of the active sentence, but see that in this case there is an tumanta, avisajjitum, with arahati. Another example, naidam sukaram agaram ajavastata brahmacharyam. This is higher life. It's not easy to be practiced by one living at home. Naidam sukaram agaram ajavastata brahmacharyam. Yeah, so here, what is sukaram is the brahmacharyam, that is not sukaram. So this brahmacharya is not. Here again, what I would say that here there is a verb hoti that is elliptic. I'm not so sure about this example. So these examples here, and then nayam sukaro jivitavoropetum with an infinitive. So the infinitive is the subject of the sentence. So na ayam jivitavoropetum sukaro hoti. We have to understand hoti. See that in English we are using is. That means hoti. So, okay, it's 11:30 here. Shall we take a break and then read a little bit of sutta? What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah, we didn't go very far today. Next day we're going to complete. Next day we'll go a little bit fast and we'll jump some things. You are expected to keep reading and to complete the nominative and the accusative by next week. Yeah, is that okay? That means we'll have to go up to page. Let me show you. So now we were in nominative case. Okay, until here. You have to read until page 107 for next week. Yeah? I hope that you have already been reading, so maybe some of you already reached here. And please keep taking your own notes, your own summaries. It's very important to have to use the examples. And sometimes, if you disagree, if you don't like or you think that is not totally correct, the interpretation of Vijayasekara, which the point is not that he is right or he is wrong. The point is there are different ways in which we can analyze a sentence. And sometimes two different approaches are possible, but we have to choose one. Like in this last one that we saw, like infinitive or arhati, avisajjitum or something like this, I would take this one as a general nominative that is the subject, and that's it. So sariputto, arhati, whatever. But that's up to you. So if you disagree sometimes with the book and you find other sources, you are totally encouraged to find other interpretations in Burmese materials, English materials, Sihanlese materials, Thai, whatever it is, wherever you can find other information, you can do that. But we are just taking Vijayasekara's book as our manual, our basic book. From this one, we depart. Yeah, this is our basis here. It's in English. It's a good synthesis, so we are using this one. And if we disagree, we can change. Now, so we are going to take a 10-minute break. And when we come back, we are going to start reading the Brahmajala Sutta. For that, I will ask some of you to read. Yeah, you read and translate, and we will be commenting on certain words. Okay. So see you in 10 minutes. See you now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Recording stopped.